Welcome everybody. Date and time functions can be quite confusing, especially if you're trying to decipher the time.h header file and the functions and the structure and types that are provided there. So yeah, it can seem cryptic. I mean, it can seem cryptic not only to a novice, but to people who have been programming for a while, especially if you're new to C and you don't do date calculations very often. The time stuff is not too hard, right? But when you get into the date, then there's a tricky function called getDate, and we'll talk about that here in a second, which probably has made a lot of people jump off a bridge out of pure frustration if they didn't pause to read the documentation. So let's get into it here. So types and functions defined in time can seem cryptic. Yes, they can. But in this video, I'm only concerned with a handful. So I'm going to talk about the struct TM. So TM is a structure that breaks down time into its constituent parts. Okay, and we'll talk more in depth on that in a bit on the next slide. Time T is a data type. It's like an int, maybe a long, right, or a double. But anyway, it holds like number of seconds since 1970 or something like that, right? So then you got time function, which takes a pointer to a time T type, right? And that will give you a calendar structure. So it'll return a struct TM. And we'll get into all this stuff when we get into the code. Then there's a function called local time, which also takes a pointer, an address, right? A reference to a time underscore T. And then the getDate. Now this getDate, like I say, man, I wonder how many people have struggled with this getDate. Now, just to be upfront, right? I'm just demonstrating how to do date and time calculations in time.h. And I'm not going to cover every aspect of time.h, but once you understand what I'm doing in this video, then the rest of the stuff will make perfect sense, right? However, I'd say that there's probably third-party libraries that do a better job of, making it easier for you to perform date calculations, simply because of the secret sauce that's required to use the getDate function. Okay, and the getDate function takes a string. You can see up in the list above, right? The getDate takes a const char, which I call date string, right? That represents the date that you want to get a date structure for, right? So in order to, let's say, calculate someone's age, you got to have today's date and then the date they were born. And because those are calendar objects, the math comes out correct, right? Most examples that you see on, the internet with how do you calculate someone's age is, I would say, like a naive implementation for the most part, right? But I mean, there are some good examples out there. But if you just simply say, well, they were born this year and that year, and if they were born in this year and you just do the math, then you're not taking into account leap years, etc. Right? So that's why working with calendar objects is important. Okay, so the secret sauce to use the getDate function is you need to set an environment variable called DATEMSK or DATEMSK. And that DATEMSK environment variable needs to point to a file with date pattern formats in it. Because when you pass in a date to the getDate, the system will then try to match the date the date string that you passed to the date formats that are in that file, and then it will parse that date string, and if it finds a match, then it will return a date, right? I literally was pulling my hair out until I went back and read the documentation and then figured out that was what I was missing, right? So, but then once I did that, everything magically worked. So let's talk a little bit more about the date or the struct TM, right? The time structure. So the struct TM is a structure and it contains several fields, right? So struct TM underscore sec is seconds after the minute. TM underscore minute is minutes after the hour. TM underscore hour is hours since midnight. and tm underscore m day is the day of the month, and tm underscore mon is months since January. So some of these you have to perform like an adjustment, right? So January is 0. If you want 1, you got to add 1 to it, right? tm underscore year is years since 1900, and days since Sunday. Or sorry, tm underscore w day is the day of the week, right? Days since Sunday. And then tm underscore y day, which means year day, okay, is days since January. So that'd be like the Julian date, or the Julian date of the year. And then tm underscore is DST is the daylight savings time flag. And that will be 1 if it's daylight savings time, 0 if it's not, and negative if there's no daylight saving time information. All right, so I'm going to start by configuring the DATEMSK, right, environment variable, and create a file with some date formats, and then we'll get into the code. So that's what I'm going to do first. See you in the next section. Okay, let's configure this environment variable. First, I'm going to start off by creating my project and create the date formats file, and then create the environment variable to point to that file. So I'm going to change to my dev directory, change to C bootcamp, and then dir. So let's see what I got in here. There's no date calc. Okay, so mkdir date calc, and then change to date calc. All right, so there's nothing in there, nothing up my sleeve. Okay, so then code. I'm just going to crank up Visual Studio Code right here. And all right, so I'm going to get rid of this welcome. So let's start with the date formats text file. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to configure the environment variable to point to the date formats text file in this directory, right? Since I'm just doing this for a demo for this particular program. Okay, so now what goes in this file? So what goes in this file are these combinations of date formats, right? So in my case, like for a birthday, I want year, month, day. Okay, I'm going to create birthdays in this format. So percent capital Y for the 4-digit year, then a dash, and then month, right? So percent M, right? And then a dash and percent day. Okay, so year, month, day. Now, obviously other things can appear in this date format pattern. So each one of these lines represent a pattern for a string that could get passed to the getDate function. So for example, if we wanted to just pass in the name of the month, right, or the full week name or whatever, right, you could just pass in let's say Wednesday, right? So full weekday name, so percent A. So that would be a percent A. Now, where am I reading that from, right? So like I say, this is out of the C programming language. Now, this is ANSI C, right? So there's different functions that have been added to C, I believe, since then, right? So, but these date formats are still fine, right? So this is the one I just added, full weekday name. And then I created the birthday pattern from percent year, which is year with century, right? So like for example, 2024, right? The small y is a year without a century, so that's like a 2-digit year. And then the month, which is percent M, and then percent D is day of the month, right? So that's good right now for now. Okay, so I'm going to save this file. Now let's set the environment variable. Okay, So I'm on a Mac, right? So you could do this. Well, for you Windows users, right, you would set the environment variable in your environment variables setting, right? And there's plenty of videos on how to do that. So I'm just going to create this environment variable for this session, right? Like I'm not going to set in the bash profile. But so export DATEMSK. Okay, and then I'm going to copy this path, actually this path right here. Date count. Save me a little bit of typing. Okay, so then the full path, right, the absolute path is what it's called. Users slash, and then whatever your username would be, that's what you would use. So, dev, because I'm in my dev folder. Actually, I'll just paste right there. Okay, and then slash formats, date formats. Date .txt, and then check everything. So export DATEMSK slash users swodog dev c underscore bootcamp date calc. Hit return, and let's check. Oh, not a valid identifier. Oh, you know what? Because I have to say equals, right? That's the problem. Live programming, man. Can't be beat. Equals. Now hit return. There we go. So CLS and do set. Pipe it to less, and we should see that. So DATEMSK is set. So now we can use the getDate function in the code. So now let's go to the code. Let's actually create the program. Come up here. Okay, we can dismiss this. And I'm going to create the main. So main.c. I'm going to start off with a fairly lengthy comment because it bears repeating. So demonstrate dates and times. And I guess I could just come on down here one more time. I'll do it this way. So note. Okay, so just to be clear, right? For this to work, an environment variable, right, named DATEMSK must be set that points to a file that contains date format elements. I should say patterns. Okay. So, okay. Now, we are going to include the usual stuff, right? Usual cast of characters. Include stdio.h, and then include time.h. That's where we get our struct tm. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to declare a type def. Oops, typedef for struct tm and call it time. Okay. Like that. Hit return. Semicolon. So this struct tm is declared in time.h. Okay. And so instead of saying struct tm every time, right, I'm just going to call it time with a capital TIME. So int, I'm going to flesh out the main now. Int main. And yeah, I'll come down here, return 0. All right. Now, how do we use these date functions? So the first thing I'm going to do is just create a time with time t. So usually you use them with a combination of things, right? The time t is a type, right, which represents the time in seconds, I believe, right? A calendar time. So I'm just going to call this t equals time. And then null. So you pass in null. Now what is an alternative to doing it this way? I'll discuss that in a bit. I could also declare time t like this, and then say time and t. Like that. Okay? But this essentially accomplishes the same thing. You know, it depends on your situation, right? So equals, the time function will return the current time, like datetime.now if you're like a C# programmer or Python programmer, right? Or Java programmer. They've got that datetime object that helps you do your job. This is just a function that just returns the time.now, right? Essentially. And then semicolon. Now, once we have this time, then we need to pass in this. It's like a big integer, right? It's sort of like a long or whatever it is, right? So we pass that in then to another function. So we have to, and then that will return a structure with all the time for the current day, right? So this is a time t, or a time structure, right? So time, and then I'll call it today, equals, and then local time. So you have to do this, put the little star in order to, because it passes, you need a reference to it, right? So it's like it's passing back the pointer. So local time, and then and t. So again, we pass in the reference to the time, in seconds, and then it creates the time structure. So local time and t. Now we can then use the the today variable, right? Because it's a structure. If we take a look at it, if we hover over it, okay, struct tm time, right? So equals, we don't get much very meaningful information, but we will here. Okay, so let's go ahead and do a printf to see what we got, right? Or to see what we have. So I'm going to say, first I'm going to start off with a fairly lengthy print format specification. So %d, %d, then, oops, keep on hitting spaces when I don't want to hit spaces. And then %02d. Now 02 means only give me 2 spaces for 02 for that particular value, and then 02 %02d. Okay, and then at this point I want to put a time in there because I'm going for like an ISO time format, and then %02d, %02d, and then colon %02d colon %02d. So now once I have that, and I'm going to do a carriage return on that one when we print it out, comma, okay. Now we use today dot tm, right? So now we see all the different fields in that today variable. All right, so it's tm year plus 1900, right? And I'll just go down here and tab over a couple times. And then today dot TM, okay, month, MON, plus 1, okay, because the months, right, start from 0 to 11, comma, today, right, .tm, and this is M day, right, so the day of the month we need, then today dot tm hour, tm hour, hour, and then today dot tm minute, okay, and then I'll carry the return one more time, comma, today dot tm underscore second. Now let's go ahead and run this and see what it produces. Make sure we didn't screw anything up. Let me go ahead and run this. At this point, right, we're not using the date format file by any stretch of the imagination, right? We're just doing a time quick. We're just taking, figuring out what time it is. We call the time function. We use the results of the time. This is like a big old long with a bunch of seconds in it. Then we pass a reference to this. We call the local time. This is going to return the time structure, okay, TM structure. And then we can use that structure, this variable today, to then pull off pieces that we want and format it in the way that we want, right, for the output. So now let's take a look and see what we have. So save that one more time. Let's go to terminal and quit that CLS. So gcc main.c. Okay. And then ./a out. So that's what we get. We get the 2024 09 26 8 47 45. And I'm looking at my clock and it looks like it's pretty accurate to me. So now let's see what else we can pull off of here. Let's take a look at what the t looks like, right? The time t. So let's just print time t. So I'm going to say another printf, quote, I'm going to say time t equals percent ti. Now I've stumbled upon this ti value, ti/n t. Okay. Let's run this, just make sure it works, and we'll see what it looks like. So CLS, GCC, and then A out. So there's our time value right there. So like I say, it's just a long, with a lot of seconds in it. Okay, and now we can also say, hey, is this daylight savings time? Okay, so printf is daylight saving time. How many people say savings time? Daylight savings time. That's what I always like to say. But it's daylight saving time. So it's a string that we're going to get out of here. Sent s and then /n. And I'm going to use a like a try. I can't even remember the name of this operator today. .tm isdst, right? So we do a question mark, and then we say, well, if that is true, we return yes. Otherwise, we return a no. Like that. So it's a three-way conditional expression. Okay, so the way that this is read is, this is your condition, right? Is that true or false, essentially, because that's going to return a 1 for daylight savings time, a 0 if it's not daylight savings time, and a -1. So -1, I'm sorry, So if that is positive, then this first one will be returned. If it's not, this second choice will be returned. Let's compile and run this. I know I go slow, right? I go slow because experienced programmers will find it very frustrating. It probably won't stick around very long for these videos. But if you're a beginner, then I go slow because if you want to type along, right, and get some experience typing, that's how you learn how to program. Let's run it. All right, so yes, it's daylight savings time because it's September. Okay, so September 26th. So now, let's turn our attention to how to perform a date calculation. All right. So earlier, I have a video on structures, okay, and I said I was going to come back to that to show you how to calculate a date, right? So in this video, I will show you how to perform an age calculation, and then I'll make another video on adding that to the person structure, okay? So essentially, what I'd like to do, right, in the big algorithm is to make it easy, is I'd like a function called getDate, okay? And then I want to pass a date string. And when I pass a date string, this getDate function will then call the, like getAge. I want to have a function called getAge, all right? So get the age of this birthday, right? And so I'd like to do something like this. Let me make the prototype, okay? So int getAge, and I want to pass const char pointer called birthday. Birthday, right? Okay, so birthday. Semicolon. So that's how the function prototype will look, right? So let's go ahead and define that. So, and then as I'm working on this, I'll talk about the different various steps that I'm doing, obviously. So int, okay, get age, const char. So in other words, it's just pointing to a string, right? Birthday. Open print, open brace, closing brace. So now the first thing we want to do is we want to get today's date, right? Because we're going to subtract the birthday date object from today's date object, right? So essentially we need to create two different date objects. So time, t, okay, t equals time null. And then we need to create the today, right? Just like we did above, time today equals local time. Local time. And then pass in the reference, right, which is the ampersand to that t, time t object, right, or integer. Now we need to make the birthday time structure. So this is a time structure, right? Or TM structure. So time bday, right, equals, okay, so get date. This is the tricky function that requires the environment variable. So get date, and I'm going to pass in the birthday. Okay, I should really call this birthday string, just to be clear. Birthday string. And I'm going to go back up here and rename this, right? It's best to be clear. Birthday string. Okay, now, once I have this, now just to be clear, the pattern that this birthday string has to be in has to match one of these date formats, right? So this date format in particular. This ain't going to give you the birthday. This will, right? Okay, so let's go back to the code. Now, once I have this, then I have to perform the calculation, right? So I've got these two different date calendar objects. I've got today and birthday, right? So int age equals, and then today dot tm year plus 1900. Okay, like that. Minus birthday dot tm year plus 1900. Okay, and I'm going to put a big old another set of parentheses around this just to make it clear my intentions. Okay, now once I have this, so I've got tm year plus int age equals, hit return, control save. So tm year plus 1900 minus bday dot tm year plus 1900. Okay. I expect, oh, you know what? That's the reason it's giving me that problem. So semicolon up there on that next line, or the previous line. Okay. Now I'm just going to run this, and then we're going to have to do an adjustment, right? Because this isn't going to give us the truth. This will just give us a rough estimate that's not based on the month and the day, right? So let me just go ahead and run this piece, but I'm going to call it, I'm going to say, all right, so I'm going to say int, oops, up here, int age equals, I couldn't possibly have typed another character without a sip of coffee. All right, so then get age, right? And then this is the format for the date string. So 4-digit year. So I'm going to say born in 1986. Oops. And then dash a 2-digit month. 0 2. Let's say 2-digit 0 8, and then 2-digit day 0 1. So August 1st, 1986. Comma. Now once we have that, I'm going to do a printf. All right. Person's age is, and then %d, comma, age. Semicolon. Okay. Save that. Let's compile and run this. Clear the screen. Compile. Oh. A non-void function does not have a return type. Let's come up here. Oh, return, right? I have to return age. Hello. Get with it. Return age. That's why the compilers do their job. Let's do that again. That's better. Clear the screen and run it. Okay, so we get age 38. Okay, but that could be true, could not be true, right? Because we got to factor in the month and the day, right? So essentially what we need to do then is perform a calculation, right? So if today dot tm month, right, is less than bday dot tm month, okay, and then open brace, closing brace, that's mon, M-O-N. I usually get carried away with the month, right? There is no th on those things. So if this is true, right, then age minus equal 1, right? So you think about that for a while. That makes sense, right? But now we need an else if, because the other condition is, now we'll have to check both of them, right? So I'm going to put a set of parentheses and then an and another set of parentheses. Okay, and then open. I'm just fleshing out the structure here. All right, so in this particular one, I want to redo the if the month is equal, right? So if today dot tm month, right, equals bday dot tm mon, right? Again, here I am with the months like that. So if the today month is the same as the bday month, and right, today dot tm mday, which is the day of the month, right, is less than, okay, bday dot tm mday. Okay, then we're going to then subtract age. So if we know we're not in the month, right, if the birthday month is greater than the month that we're in, right, we know for a fact that we're not that old, right? Because we haven't reached our birthday month. We may be in the year, but we haven't reached our birthday month, right? And then we come back here and we go age negative equals 1, right? I do this just to be clear on what's going on. And then we return the age. So now let's run this with a few different values, right? So let's go ahead and compile it and see what, right? So compile, and then clear the screen and run it. Okay, so 38. So the person is still 38 years old. All right. Now let's add a few more dates in there, right? So we're going to say, I'm just going to repeat this several times with different dates. All right, so let's make one that today is September, right? So this person was born in August 1st, so we know that their birthday has come and gone, right? So now let's say that it's the day before, right? 9. So I'm doing this on the 26th of September, okay? So 9/25. So it should still be, at this point, they should be 38. But if I go 9, right? And on 9/26, right? I think it should still be there. So 09, I'll go 26 just to make sure there isn't no logic problems that I'm missing. And then come back here one more time and do 27. Okay, so at this point, they should be 38, 38, 38, right? Because they turn 38 today. And then they should still be 37 if their birthday was on the 27th, because they haven't quite actually reached their birthday. Okay, so let's clear the screen, compile. Okay. Redefinition age, right? So let's go back up here and yep, that's a newbie mistake. Let's just do this. Age, right? You don't want to redefine your stuff. You guys are probably screaming at me through the computer terminal. Dude, man, frickin' get rid of that thing. All right, CLS, and run the program. All right. Oh, you know what? I didn't put any carriage return, so it's impossible to friggin' see what's going on here. So /n, 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 and /n. Now let's run it. We should be able to easier see what's going on. Compile, clear the screen, and run it. All right. Okay. So Daylight saving time, yes, right? So all this stuff is the same. And then person's age is 38, 38, 38, and 37. So that's what I expect to see that. And that's pretty much it. So to recap, what we've discussed is to use this function, the getDate, right? You have to configure the date formats file with the patterns that you want it to match. All right, so that's why when I'm calling the getAge, right, function, I'm passing in the birthday string, okay, and that birthday string matches, right, that pattern. If that didn't match, right, this would not work. I'll leave that to you as an exercise, right? You can download this code. It's in the repository, and you can play around. And when you play around, right, add different date formats. You know, go into the date format text. Be sure that you're setting your environment variable, because if you don't set that, then your program's not going to find, right? All right, so then so we start off with getting today's date in this getAge function. This is like a big old double, or not a double, but a long that has a lot of seconds in it, right? I think it's since 1970. I'd have to do some research, so don't quote me on that one. But it's an integer value, or a numeric value that contains date time information, right? Okay, so then from that we pass in the reference to this object to the local time, and we return a pointer to that. Okay, so this is a type def that I did up here at the top, so I didn't have to keep saying struct time, right? So that's my time. So time today, get the local time, and then time birthday uses the get date with this birthday string. Okay, and then if it pattern matches, then it will return that structure. If it doesn't match the pattern, then your program's just going to die from a segment fault. Just beware, right? So I recommend playing around with patterns and see what you get, right? But for a birthday, you want to make sure that you got year, month, day, right? Then you can calculate the birthday. You could probably also too, well, not probably, you could make the birthday down to the minute and second, right? So you could sit there with twins, and that you could sit there and say, well, it's my birthday because I was born, in 2 minutes after midnight, and you didn't show up till 2 minutes and 30 seconds, right? So take that, punk. All right. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this lecture. Again, these date time structures and types can be tricky. The functions can be a little difficult to understand how they work at first. So having a good example, and this will provide an age, right? Now there's another function in modern versions of C that you can use called strp from time or something like that, right? I didn't cover that here, right? Because I'm just focusing on the ANSI stuff here. All right, so anyway, I hope you found it helpful, and I'll see you in the next lecture.